Alrighty, here we are back from go some sun out of my face. Whew. So I've just pulled the motor. Had one of the clamps on so dang tight it broke the handle off. Morning, guys. So this brand new motor, I had to, you got these little clamps that you tighten down. It's got a little swiveling handle on it, and they're little plastic ones that they break off. So I had to grab a crescent wrench to turn the thing loose to get it off. But the motor's off the back now. You can see my transom mount where it used to be. It's sitting in the canoe over there. So I've kind of committed myself now. I can't really use the canoe until I fix it and get it back over here. Because if I go to the shore and leave that motor sitting in the canoe, a brand new motor, it's probably not going to be there when I get back from work, even though it's not running just right. It's still, somebody will steal it and fix it. And yeah, it's too new to leave like that. Not even bolted down. So that means I have to do it. I've committed myself to fixing the motor. Ronnie, thank you. I'm gonna pin Dorcas's. You got a space between the $ and captain. Captain has to be capitalized, and so does Howie. But thanks for endorsement. Ronnie, Susan, Estado, Dorcas, welcome here, everybody. Seems like the usual crowd. So yeah, got up, talked a little smack. Oh, I didn't even know that uploaded. I'm probably gonna switch that to private because I like to listen through all of them, and I don't like posting. Anything that's might be controversial, political or whatever, I'm probably going to put it in private and then just let members only, make a members only thing for that. I want to keep the basic open public channel content to be just educational nature and like cool scenes of animals and stuff. And if people want to know more personal stuff like my politics and beliefs, then they can become a member, or they can be there in the conversation when it happens, But yeah, I don't really like just throwing it out there for all the trolls to latch on to and cancel people to freaking focus on. I tell you, I'm about sick of libtards canceling people's opinions, though. Like, if you're not willing to debate your opinion with facts, reason, and logic, then you don't really believe in your opinion, and you just got a feeling you have an agenda, but you know it's not right, or else you would be willing to debate it. Hey, Sosa. Welcome back. Now, just taking a little break. I got up and pulled the motor off the back. Got my registration on the way now. Should be in the mail Tuesday. Monday's a holiday, I think. So, what is Monday? I didn't know there was another holiday. Is it Memorial Day or something? I don't know, government. It's one of those days where everybody works except the government. Yeah, it's one of those government worker holidays that nobody celebrates except government workers because no one else can take the day off. Yeah, Memorial Day. Yeah, nobody else can afford to take Memorial Day off. Morning, Fash. But yeah, so Monday's Memorial Day. No government offices doing business. So, except the jails, they're still locking people up. But yeah. So Tuesday it should be in the mail, and by the end of next week I should have the new 2-year sticker, and I'll have that motor rebuilt, and maybe we'll go take a cruise. Maybe I'll go out to the river and show you guys the inlet and the riverway and all that. And I don't know. Got a fishing license. I'm about overdue to move this boat anyway. I might go spend a week at the other cove or something. I don't want to get too far from the dog park where I go to shore, because it's just I like parking the canoe there. I know that the neighborhood keeps an eye on it, and everybody around knows who it belongs to. And criminals don't really go frequent that park. It's not really a place where you can get away with going and stealing a canoe, But if I were to park it down the river next to the forest, any old random person walk up there and see it, and it's fair game, and there's nobody looking. And yeah, if I hide it, then it makes it hard for me to find my way back to it. It's just easier to go to the park. So I like to stay within that area where it's not too much work. I don't want to be wore out before I get to work. So paddling to work, I want to stay fairly close to the spot where I go to shore. I could motor this boat over there, and then I'm leaving my boat with everything I own right next to the shore in the park, and that becomes like this issue of what's this guy doing here. A canoe doesn't stand out like a 15 by 8 homemade boat. It's like, doesn't even have a make. It draws a lot of attention. So yeah, I keep this back here in the cove, but within a reasonable paddling distance where I can get to shore and not be too wore out, and take a break at the dog park, and go to work. Sometimes I'll sit there, I'll get to work, sit down and have a pup session before I start, and just kind of look at the area and see what would be the best use of my time. Before even getting started, I take like 15 minutes to just sit and look at it, or walk around it and look at it. And that usually helps me, where when I do go into action, I get a lot more done. It's more productive. I tend to think, okay, let's blow off this thing we were doing over here and do something that's more important over here that I noticed. Sometimes you do that, take a fresh look at the whole place in the morning, and a lot of times I realize, what? This shit I'm working on right now really doesn't matter near as much as that over there. It needs to be done. I've just been putting that off. Let's go do that. Like, it helps to take a fresh look at it. Just sit at it. Just sit and look at it for a while before going at it. You wouldn't believe how much time it saves you. It feels like you're wasting time. But believe it or not, if you're really meditating on what you're about to do and where to start first and what direction to go in, you will find that your work day gets 100 times more productive. Well, not 100, but at least 50% more productive throughout the day for that 15 minutes of just looking at it and plotting. And kind of get, if you got a crew, get them together, sit around with them and talk about, So you coordinate a little bit. So when you all start moving, you're all working in a coordinated movement, and everybody knows what everybody's about to do. And, yeah, it goes so much smoother. I don't know if you're a crew leader and you can get one or two people from the crew to sit with you at break time and sit there and point at shit and look at it and talk about what's going to happen after break. Then when the crew goes back, those two people fall in line with what you've already talked about, and everyone follows them, because if there's three people, there's no argument. If one person says, hey, let's do this, you might get three people going, nah, maybe we should this. And even though you're the boss, they're going to argue with you. But when one person agrees with the boss and says, no, he's right, everyone stops arguing. A third person jumps in and agrees, and suddenly everyone gets on the page. No one argues with it. Like, three people in agreement can run any crew. The one guy has to have the plan, the other guy just has to just agree to listen to it, and the third person agree that it's the right plan, and then the whole entire group will follow those three every single time, because that's group mentality. That's how it works. You would not believe how much smoother a day will go the next 4 hours to your next break when you work like that. Just another one of those things where I talk about, sitting and debating, discussing it, and planning it creates more productive hours than 1,000 hours of actual effort. And also you find that the other crews that don't do that, they'll work for 4 hours, look back and realize that 2 hours of one or two of their guys' work needs to be undone and redone. And that's not just 2 hours of wasted time. That's also all the time it takes to redo it and undo it to get it right. So that's like, that pretty much, if two guys go off in the wrong direction, the entire crew's day's production is wasted recovering that time. And then you're only breaking even. You haven't made the company any money. You've just basically broke even. Just because two guys went off in the wrong direction and did shit that had to be redone. I can't tell you how many times that's cost. It costs the contract sometimes. The company doesn't just lose those 2 hours. They sometimes lose the reputation, and they don't get the next $4 million contract because of it. Am I going to the mainland? At some point I need to, maybe. I'm trying to kind of avoid it, but kind of thinking, man, I don't have any food on board that sounds appealing to me right now. And I'm out of weed. I got a little shake stash. I think that could get me through the day if I don't get too crazy with it. Like I said, I got the canoe. I got the motor in the canoe, so I want to get that repaired and back on here before I go to shore. So it's already getting hot. Like I said last night, I'd be happy if I just get it on the canoe and then work on it tomorrow. But if I go with that, then that means stay here all day, don't go to shore. Just kind of vegetate the day away. Maybe fish from here. No, I'm not going to fish in this cove. I'm not going to go fishing with the motor in the canoe either. It's just too much hassle to work around it. So it says it's a 6-horse, but it's a Chinese knockoff, so I'm betting it probably only has 4 or 5 horsepower. But it's basically a knockoff, Chinese knockoff of a 5-horse Mercury, but it says 6-horse, which is really not an accurate measurement of power, because there's so many different factors involved. You're not actually getting 6 horses out of it unless you apply it right. Like, the engine could produce 6 horse if it had the right gear ratio and the right prop and it was, on the right boat. But it's just a number they threw on there. It's kind of it's hard to explain how they express horsepower from one company to another is really not very accurate of a measurement of power. That's a hawk calling out. Well, that was me emulating a hawk that was over there calling out. He got quiet all of a sudden. Preferred brand for an outboard. It really depends on what you're doing with it. But for this particular type of boat, I really like Mercury, um, which the hangkai is just a knockoff of an old Mercury. A lot of people talk smack about Mercury, but they got all kinds of push power. It's a good motor. I don't care what anybody says. I've used 5 horse 2-stroke Mercury on my dinghy to pull a 37-foot yacht, a sailboat, off the shore. Like, they got power. They're not super fast, but they got pulling power, pushing power. Like, you got, okay, I'll compare. I've had a Mercury 5 horse, a Yamaha 4 horse, a Tohatsu 5 horse, and Hank now 6 horse. Out of Johnson 8 horse. Of all these different motors, if I go with just the 5 horse or the 4, 5, 6, those are all really basically the same. They're just different numbers from different companies, but they're all the same power. Okay, you put a Nissan 5 horse on the same boat, you'll get the same speed as the Mercury 5 horse. The difference is the Nissan revs higher revolutions to get the speed, whereas the Mercury has a more pitch on the prop to push harder with more thrust to get more speed. With a lower RPMs and a higher thrust, it it pushes with a sturdier drivetrain and a more of a pitch on the prop rather than just faster revs. Okay, Yamaha and Nissan, very similar, higher revving. Tohatsu also, it's like the Yamaha. But the Mercury it has more raw push power with less strain on the motor because, it doesn't get as angry hot. Yes, well, yeah, not necessarily. Fuel economy, there's so many different factors that higher revs is like, it's more about, like, if you're using higher revs but you're pushing a lot of displacement, you're not getting the efficient. If you got a boat that planes off and it's gliding on the top with minimal resistance, then higher revs is better. But if you got a boat that pushes through the water and displaces the water instead of coming up on top of it, then pushing harder is better with lower revs. See, more thrust with less effort on the fuel. So it really depends on the hull, and what the purpose of the boat is and how it floats. You know, everybody always has a question of what's the right motor, and it really just depends. It really does depend a lot on the shape and design and purpose of the hull itself. It has everything to do with what motor you should pick. Yeah, it is a science. It is quite a bit of science involved in it. Um, Not with this boat. This boat doesn't plane without. It would take probably 15 or 20 horse to plane this boat. So I eventually plan to put 10 on each nacelle and get rid of the outboard. Like, I'm gonna put. The plan is, when I have the money and the energy and the opportunity to haul it out and refurbish and put a bunch of money into it, the plan is to put twin jet drives on either outrigger in them with little jet nozzles, remove the rudders, and put a single rudder in the middle where this motor was, and then get rid of the gas engine and put twin engines with shifters and throttles on the sides here in the cockpit. And then I could control some steering control by just the motors, by balancing the motors, you know. But I also have redundancy in the drivetrain. If one motor goes down, I got the other. It's also much cheaper to replace a motor on such a drivetrain because I only have to replace the power head rather than the entire outboard. You know, there's a lot. And yeah, by the way, welcome Dixon, welcome back. Russell's been here before. He's just been a while. But let's say you got a really lightweight 12-foot Feathercraft aluminum dinghy. No, 5 horse won't plane that out either. It takes about 8 horse to plane that out, and then 10 horses if you have a person in it with you. But it's not going to plane out with 2 people and some gear and a 5 horse. Eight or 10 will plane it. And then you put the same thing on the same boat, but 14 feet long instead of 12, and it'll not only plane, but it'll get up and go. It'll outrun that little 12-foot boat. There's another, oh, that's a cardinal. Just flew by. Got some pretty birds around here. Got red-crested blackbirds and cardinals, blue jays, ospreys, swallows. I've seen owls around here, barred owls. Good, George. Welcome back. Just got the motor pulled and put it in the canoe. And so I'm going to have to, at some point, work up the gumption to go over there, set up my camera, and show people how to pull a carburetor from this. This is going to be the 6-horse Mercury, the 6-horse hangkai 2-stroke carburetor rebuild is what's coming next. And it's going to be the exact same as a carburetor rebuild on an old late 80s, early 90s Mercury 5-horse 2-stroke. It's the same motor, and it's basically any 5-horse or 4-horse outboard out there, be it Mercury, Yamaha, pretty much anything other than maybe the only thing that would be more complicated, would be a little different, would be like a Honda. Or something like a propane engine that runs on propane or something like that, an alternative fuel. Or fuel injection. I've put a video up of doing a fuel injection system on a 15-horse, I believe it was. But yeah, it's be a good little walkthrough for a carburetor rebuild. And it's not that tricky. I just got to talk myself into putting my pants on and going and doing it. I got to put on my big boy pants and go to work. Actually, I'm going to put on my dirty, greasy pants from yesterday's work. So I don't want to get my... Yeah, one leg at a time, just like normal human beings. You got it. You got it, Fash. Yeah, I do have a tool, like a bin of equipment in the canoe under the deck, and if I slide it into just the right position, I can kind of stick the phone there and use the life vest to hold it up. Usually that'll work, as long as I don't shift anything and make things slide around, you know. So I need to bring. I should have plenty of. I'll just use an old t-shirt for a grease rag. I would end up in the garbage anyway, it's so stained. Maxwell, welcome back. Bang, bang, Maxwell's silver hammer came down upon her head. Yeah, you know, that's a good idea. In fact, I would probably look in the bicycle section for phone mounts that clip to bicycle handle or something like that. Might be able to find something that would mount up here and grip the phone. And then maybe, you know, have a little way to charge it. That's probably where I'll find, yeah, either there or you know, in the auto parts. Most of the auto phones are like suction cup type that meant to stick on the dash or windshield or something. Like, I don't really have a spot like that, but I may be able to modify one of those. Get a couple of them in key places on the boat would be nice, but it's just not my biggest priority right now. I always seem to have something more important, but you know, I'm starting to think what could be more important than growing the YouTube with some better equipment for it. Okay, I got my dirty work pants on. Got a new shirt on. It's dirty enough. I don't care if it gets greased. These are work shirts. I bought 6 of them for $9, something like that. Save me from doing laundry for another day. Laundry's a hell of a chore in a boat. You know, if you got to carry it, you either got to wash it in salt water, then rinse it in fresh water, and you got to carry all that water, or you got to carry your laundry to shore, wash it at the laundromat, and carry it back. And it's not like people just walk into or you know, people just throw it in the laundry at their house and they consider it a big chore. Or, you know, they load it into their car and drive to the laundromat. They don't load it in the canoe, paddle to shore, then carry it on their back to the laundromat. You know, it's a whole different thing. Just the simple, basic things like getting laundry is... Maybe one cap. Benefit of Mr. Oh, I'm down on cigarettes too. Yeah, I definitely need to get this done. I want to be able to get to shore, get at least a little something to eat, something that'll settle my stomach. I probably want to get a kefir and 1 or 2 more joints, a pack of cigarettes. I've still got a couple days left of this weekend. I better take it easy on the money. I don't have a lot of it. Alrighty, let's take my rag. And I think I got everything I need. I think there was a pair of pliers somewhere. Oh no, they're in the toolkit. Okay. I got tools scattered all around. I'm gonna need a Phillips screwdriver for this. And I don't remember where I stuck here. I stuck it here somewhere on the deck. If I remember right, this is going to need needle nose pliers, a Phillips screwdriver, and a 10mm socket. It should handle everything I need. So right now I'm looking for a Phillips screwdriver somewhere here on deck because I was using it earlier. I was using it earlier this week, so I know it's tucked up here on the deck somewhere in this mess. There's the flathead screwdriver. There's my stubby. That one's all stripped out. Need a new stubby screwdriver. There, got these pliers can go back. Just bear with me, folks. I'm about to do this, but I need to find that screwdriver. I do have other options for that, but I'd rather have the right screwdriver. There it is, found it. Okay. Number 2 Phillips. Needle nose pliers. Oh, and WD-40, of course. A rag. 10mm sockets over there with the ratchet set, and that should be it. I think we're pretty much ready to go. Let's get over here to the canoe and make sure I got power. It's at 100%. We're good there. What do you call a bloke with 50 rep? I'm not gonna look. I need to upload this video, and it's not gonna be set to private, so I don't want to have any dirty jokes in here this time. I'm gonna try to keep it kind of serious and apolitical and no religion, you know, for a minute. Oh boy, that old gas cap's leaking. It's a good thing I don't have a full tank, so it would be a little gas in the bottom of the canoe. Another reason not to do this hanging over the water. Okay, so there's my messy motor. I got the hood off. I'm gonna go ahead and stick that over here out of the way. And another thing, before you get started on something like this, you want to have like a bin of some kind that you can put small parts in and not lose them. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the carburetor off, and as soon as I do, I'm going to take the carburetor, put it in this bin, and go up on the boat to work on it, so I'm out of the canoe and I don't risk losing any parts down here under the floor. That could be a pain in the butt. Okay, so let's set you guys up here, kind of give you a view of what I'm doing. Okay, let's see, how can I do this? I think I can put the tools on the sailboat, if I got a spot here where they'll fit. Just getting things where they sit right and fit around me. I could get in here and work on it. Okay, this old toolbox is starting to lose it too. Okay, that should be all the tools I need. Oh boy. Wait a minute. I might have a little problem here. I'm missing the ratchet I need. It's not in here. I mean, I have it somewhere. Just don't know where I used it last. Let me see if I can find a 10mm in this size socket. I got 2 ratchet kits here, but I'd like to use the smaller one. Okay, that'll work. I'll work it. 10mm ratchet. Ah, a wire brush. That'll come in handy. Phillips screwdriver. Alright, let's get started here. First thing to do is position it. Put the carburetor facing upward. Now, let me show you what I'm looking at here. Full start. This is your power head with a flywheel casing here. Carburetor's behind this plate. This plate is here just to protect it from water splashing into the air intake for the carburetor. And you see, there's a rubber grommet here. I just left it out, but you pop that rubber grommet out to access that bolt, which holds that cover plate on. And this bolt is already above the edge of the cowling, the lower cowling here. So we're going to take these two bolts off, but before we do that, we want to come over here. Want to come over to this side. This cable here is your throttle cable. As you turn the throttle, you'll see it pulls on that cable and spring release goes back into position. This is what controls your throttle. You don't want to pull the carburetor out with that connected, so you're going to come in here and you're just going to loosen that screw a little bit until that cable slips out. No big deal. Sorry. First thing we're going to do is just loosen that guy up and slip the cable out. Don't loosen it too much. You don't want that screw to fall. But go ahead and just pull it out the back. And got a little fraying on the cable there, but that's no biggie. That just hangs there. Now we have the choke linkage. Okay, this is the choke, and this is the linkage that controls it. We're going to take this little white clip and just push it back off of that rod, and it'll swing. Oh, sorry, I'm losing my feed. I'm going to have to set this up so you can see it. The little plastic rod there, I'm just going to push backward gently on both sides of this plastic and push it off of the rod that it's latched around. And I don't know if I can hold the camera, you'll see it, but there it goes. See how it just slides off the rod? It just snaps off, and then the rod can be pulled straight out like so and just taken off to the side. Now that rod, if you're not careful, it might fall, so I want to kind of just hang it there out of the way. I don't want it in the way where it's going to get knocked out of place, but I don't necessarily need to take it out completely. It might help to prevent losing parts. Oh, and there it just fell. Okay, so I'm going to take the rod out, put it in my little bin, secure this on the deck where it's not going to get lost. And once that rod comes out, now the choke handle comes out. And we'll show you how that goes back together later. Just get it out of the way and make sure you don't lose any parts. Now we have throttle disconnected, choke disconnected. The only thing connected now is the fuel line. So let me reposition the canoe and show you how to deal with that. Or I'm going to reposition the motor. gonna turn it over on this side. So this is where the needle, sorry, I got you, hold on. Let me flip the camera again. Okay, this is a pretty cool outboard. It's kind of unique in a few ways because it has a connector for it to hook an onboard fuel tank to it. So you can use the integrated fuel tank. Here's what I'm using. Here's the valve to shut it on and off, and goes into the fuel pump and the carburetor. But there's also an alternative line. Whoa! Dang it, the wind's blowing my parts off the boat. Gotta secure that. Okay, you can see there's a T here. And then the other line goes over to a connector for a hose to connect to an external tank. So that's a neat little thing that I may eventually get the external tank connected to it, so I don't have to refuel it every few hours, every couple hours. But anyway, on with this point of the topic here, we're going to pull this clamp. It's a squeeze clamp. I'm going to get a hold of it with some pliers and just pull it back away from the fuel pump. And my needle nose pliers are rusty and stuck, so I'm working with slip joint pliers. There, once it comes off the nipple there, it's going to be loose and just flap around, but it shouldn't fall off the hose at the end, because the end of the hose is kind of bubbled out a little bigger than the rest. So then I'm going to just, you can take a flathead, and push it, you know, just use it between the hose and the nipple to pry it off, or you can take a pair of pliers and just twist and pull the hose off there. It sometimes gets a little sticky at first and helps to loosen it with a, like I said, with a flathead screwdriver. You can get in there between the fuel pump and the hose and just kind of twist it, and it pries it off, gets it loose enough to where you can pull it off the rest of the way without, the objective is to get that hose off of there without breaking the hose, messing it up, or losing the clamp. Okay, now the carburetor is completely free. The only thing now is those two 10mm bolts that are holding it to the intake, and they're also holding the air breather cover. So when you pull these off, you're going to catch that breather from falling and take the carburetor at the same time and get both bolts and keep those from falling. So once again, let me set you down, flip the camera around and put you guys over here where I can resituate this motor, position where I can work with it. I gotta be careful, that wind gust almost blew these parts over into the water. Okay, now I'm looking down at the heads of those two bolts, and I go ahead and get my 10mm socket and ratchet set. Get my little bin of parts over here nearby where I can reach it. And the seat is way back here. Okay, flipping the camera. I'm gonna need both hands for this, so I'm gonna have to put you guys down. But here, what I like to do is I'll loosen this one here on the outside, but don't pull it all the way out. Just have it to where it's hand tight, where you can get it easily. but you want it staying attached to the motor and holding the carburetor and air breather and all that from falling, but loose. The reason why is because this is the one you got to pull out, and you want that one still holding everything, because that's the one you can take out with everything attached. The other one has to come out through the hole in the cowling. So we're going to loosen the right one, and then we're going to remove this one completely, leaving the one on the right holding things in place. And dang it, that bigger socket just barely fits in there. It might get stuck. I think it's working. Yeah. It's a little tight. Okay, now, once it's loose enough, you should be able to take the ratchet off of it and just use the socket and extension to twist it out the rest of the way. And my old rusty tools, they still work. Doesn't matter what tools you buy, they're going to get rusty out here in the salty water, so I don't try to worry about getting high quality expensive tools. I just get cheap ones that work, and then when they get lost or destroyed, it's not a big heartache. Okay, now I gotta be hands-free to pull this loose, so I'm gonna tuck you guys in here. Get this first bolt out here. As soon as you get both bolts loose, the entire carburetor comes loose from the motor. Now, one thing you kind of got to keep in mind is when you pull the carburetor loose, there's going to be a gasket behind it. Usually, that gasket is going to stick to the motor itself, but sometimes it might fall, and if you lose it, you're going to have to get a new one. You may have to get a new one anyway, because they kind of need to be replaced often if they get crushed and compressed to the point where they don't seal anymore, or there's any tear in them or anything. You need to get rid of it and replace it. And it's no biggie, they're cheap, and you can actually just buy some gasket material, and it's actually not hard to make a gasket. Even with, like, you can use the tag board from a cereal box to make a gasket there. It's just going to absorb a lot of fuel and eventually start dripping fuel through the gasket, because it's a carburetor gasket. So you really want the right gasket for it. But you can make it work. You know, just makeshift something to make it run. Get you home in a pinch with some tag board off a cereal box. Okay, now I took the carburetor off. Show you what I'm working here. Flip the camera. Okay, so I pull the carburetor. Pull the carburetor, and there is a reed valve inside the intake. You see the gasket's stuck here. So I'm just going to leave it there, and it's pretty fairly intact. You do not want to use any gasket sealant on this. Oh crap, that gasket is not intact actually. Okay, yeah it is. Okay, it's still all there. Oops, sorry. You don't want to use any gasket sealer on this, because it'll get inside the carburetor into the engine and gum parts up that you can never fix, and you just have to rebuild the carburetor. So this is the carburetor, and this is the diaphragm style fuel pump that's integrated to the carburetor. It's all one piece. You should not need to change this or take it apart ever, unless for some reason your fuel system's got a torn diaphragm. Like, you should really avoid taking this apart unless you really need to. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside. Here's the breather cover. Mercury's are a little different, but not really. And here's the two bolts that held it all together. Okay, from here on out, all we're going to need is the needle nose pliers and the screwdriver and the rag, the bin, and a WD-40. Okay, so I'm going to take the bin of parts and tools, take the needle nose pliers, the Phillips screwdriver, and the carburetor. Oh, and you don't really need this, but I'm going to bring it. The wire brush and the WD-40. Now I'm going to secure this motor and lay it down to where it can just sit here, won't fall around or shift too much. And these tools need to be secured off the deck, so there's a few parts in here too. I don't want to get those mixed up or fall. It's crucial that those stay. The latch on this old toolbox is just shot. They've been with me a couple years gathering rust. Okay, so that we're going to take up here on deck and work with. I think I'll take it over there on the bow. I don't want to go under the tarp with this fuel. I guess my tools will be okay there, I hope. Back on the board. I'll take the motor cover out of the way here. Alrighty, let me get over here and get situated. Still got a little shade on this side of the boat. Might be able to get away with not getting too fried in the sun. Alright, now let's see if I can set this camera up some kind of way. There, will that work? Okay. Now the fun begins. Let me explain a little about the different cleaners, penetrators, and lubricants that you might use to clean a carburetor. You see a lot of mechanics they swear by things like PB Blaster and Liquid Wrench and different brands for loosening old bolts and nuts. Those are great. PB Blaster's not really the best. The reason people use it is because if you spray PB Blasted on a part and it still won't come loose, you can still put a torch to it and it won't ignite the PB Blaster. It has a very extremely high ignition point, so it's hard to ignite it, and it makes it safe for using as a bolt loosener, where you might have to use a torch later, or in an area where you don't want it to catch fire. Like on the outside of your engine, you spray some lubricant of some kind and then you got the engine running, it gets hot. Gas or a lot of different solvents might just ignite and catch your engine on fire. Okay, now when you're working with a carburetor, you have the opposite problem. You want the parts in here to be lubed up with something that burns, because you don't want it to be hard to start. So you really need something like WD-40. It burns, and so it doesn't prevent starting when you put the carburetor together and there's a little WD-40 still in there. It doesn't make it hard to start. It actually helps make a smoother start. Let's see if I can demonstrate. Don't try this at home. Don't do that at home, because the flame can go into here and blow the can up right in your hand. But very flammable stuff. Speaking of flammable stuff, I'm about to be working on some gasoline and flammable liquids, so before I do that, I want to light a cigarette. Because once I get gas all over my hands, I can't light a cigarette. Because that open flame will light my face on fire. Okay, let's get started. First thing you're going to do, so you're going to look at this carburetor, you're going to look at the bottom. There's a bowl-shaped piece at the bottom. And It's called the carburetor bowl. If you flip it upright, you're probably going to get some fuel leaking out into your hand. No big deal. It's got, some have 3, most have 4 screws, Phillips screws. And you're going to just go around and loosen them all 4 of them. Some of them actually on small engines will have just 1 bolt right here holding the whole thing on, and it's also the seal and it's also the drain, and when you take that bolt out, the whole thing's going to fall. Okay, when you take these screws out, you want to make sure you're holding it upside down to where the screws stay in the bowl and you don't lose any parts. And when you take the bolt off, there are some very small parts inside that can fall out. You need to have it over your bin so that any of those parts fall, and you want to take them out immediately and put them in the bin so you don't lose them. They're crucial, and if you miss, they're expensive parts too. They can be hard to replace. And so, you know, like if you don't have a carburetor rebuild kit for this carburetor already, you probably don't want to do this without taking some care to make sure you don't lose any parts. Again, there's going to be a gasket here, and you want to be careful. Try not to break it, but if you do break it or it's compressed, then you'll need a new one. That's going to be a rubber gasket that's designed to withstand alcohol and gas. So not just any rubber donut gasket will work. It has to be for gas and alcohol, or it'll dissolve the rubber. The liquids will dissolve the rubber of a regular O-ring. This gas smells terrible. I can smell the bad fuel. It just doesn't even smell. It smells like gas and turpentine mixed. Okay, look in there. You see all that debris? There's like grit and stuff in the bottom. It's not a lot, but that's all it takes to keep your carburetor from running. Okay, inside these, on the Mercuries, you don't have to worry about the parts falling out because there's a set screw there. The set screw holds the pivot pin in place, that holds this float in place and allows it to pivot up and down. Okay, and the float is attached here on this tab to, there's a little metal tab under there. You want to be careful not to lose that because that's holding your needle valve. You need that. That's very important. Okay, there's also 2 jets here. This is the high-speed jet and this is the idle jet, the low-speed jet. You want to leave those alone for now until, what we're going to do is we're going to take this set screw out, and immediately that's going to loosen that pin and the float. So I want to catch those and make sure I hold on to those, the screw, the pin, the needle valve, the float, all is going to come apart all at once, and I want to just drop it right into the bin and not lose any of it. Okay, and that needle valve feels really sticky, and that's probably the problem. I believe the needle valve was stuck closed and not allowing fuel flow out, and then the bad gas is compounding the problem. Okay, so now I'm looking at this rubber gasket going around here with the 2 little ports in it. I want to gently, just very ever so gently, try to keep that intact. Try not to stress or strain or stretch it at all. And you want to make sure that it's not compressed. If it's overly compressed and it doesn't have any rubbery feeling to it, you need to replace it. But if it's got good compression still, and it'll make a seal when you put this back together. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of cleave up that surface area around where that seal was. I forgot. I'm going to need a flathead screwdriver. So now I'm going to get into these jets. I'm going to take the high-speed jet. There's a rubber stopper in there. Do you need that? It will not run right without it. It won't run, might not run at all. Okay, take that and stick it in my bin. And now we have these 2 jets, and what you need is a screwdriver small enough to fit down in there but flat, and you want to be very careful. That's soft metal. It's aluminum cast aluminum casing with a soft brass fitting. So I really don't like getting into cleaning the jets if it doesn't need it. This carburetor is way overdue for a jet cleaning, but I don't have the right screwdriver here. I'm going to leave this alone. I just want to get it running again and clean out the gas. So this is where it's good to have WD-40 with the straw that you can put into that jet, and then you're going to spray in while looking inside the butterfly valve, and you're going to look to see that you got fuel coming through and out into the carburetor when you spray it. And if not, you need to take that jet out and clean it out. But okay, I got good flow. That's actually pretty good. That's cleaner than I thought it would be. And then I'm going to try the other jet, make sure that that also pushes through into the high speed. And then I'm going to go to that hole where the needle valve was, and I'm going to spray in there, and I'm going to see it come out the fuel intake. Good. And then I'm going to go in the fuel intake and see it come out the needle valve hole. See? Good. That's good flow. And now that's one to lubricate the other hole next to the intake. It shoots into here, and it lubricates the reed valves on the intake side of the motor. Just make sure that all the top end of the motor gets lubed a little bit. And it also goes into lube, oh no, the crankcase breather goes to lube the bearings. Okay, now I could show you a little more in depth of a carburetor rebuild if it really needed to go down to it. But basically what you want to do is go to all the little holes in this carburetor and shoot some WD and make sure they're cleared out. You want to make sure there's not a single speck of dust or debris, not a freaking hair. Even a human hair in this carburetor bowl can stop it from running or make it flood. So you don't want a single speck of anything in there when you're done. And same with this guy, the bowl. I'm going to get all that dust out of there, dissolve it with some WD-40 or solution, get rid of it. And if you need to take your wire brush and go through it, whatever you got to do to soak it overnight in some solution, but get every speck of grit of any kind that could break loose and get stuck in that needle valve. You want it out of there, or it's going to cause problems. You don't want any water getting in here. Can also blow up your engine. So you want to make sure that your fuel system is good and clean and gets regular maintenance. And again, I'm dumping all this into this bucket so it don't go in the waterway. And I'm doing it over the solid part of my boat to where any drips don't go through the cracks in the deck. It lands on the hull and gets trapped into, it actually drains into the cockpit onto my clothes. But yeah, I'm trying to keep this all in the bin here. And once we've gone through and got it cleaned up enough to where there's no debris in it, you just want to go through. You want to be careful. It's soft metal. You want to mess up any of the moving parts. You don't want to mess it up. But also you want to be pretty thorough. I'm going to dry that bowl out because it looks like I got still got turpentine taped in the bottom. It's just turning to resin down there. It's not going to come loose without some persuasion. I leave it in there, then the gas eventually dissolves it, and it gets turns into a solution that coats the engine parts and gets cooked into the engine. It's ultimately what kills your engine in the end if you don't destroy it by other means. So the longer you can prevent the more of that, the longer your engine's going to last, in theory. Okay, bowl's pretty clean. And now the carburetor, you might go with a flat scraper or a razor blade and go around and take any residue off of this seal, but I'm finding that it's pretty much coming off. This engine's less than 3 years old, so none of this is really crusted on very well. It's just because I left it sit and didn't run it for a while, and the fuel just gathers water. You got alcohol and fuel and water sitting long enough, it makes like this turpentine like resin inside, where it's almost like coating everything in lacquer, and it just gets sticky and stops working. Okay, so I got the carburetor clean, I got the bowl clean. Now I'm ready to start cleaning the small parts. And okay, let's check the needle valve. There's something I skipped on here. We want to take the little tab off carefully, because now it can come off of the float and it can easily be lost, and without it none of this works. Put that tab aside here. The float needs to be cleaned a little better. Shake it, listen to it, make sure there's no gas inside it, because if this thing fills with liquid, it's not going to work. So that's another thing, you want to check that. Clean it up real good. We'll set that aside over here. Now I got this needle valve, and some of them are solid metal piece with a rubber tip. So what you want to do, some of them have a plunger on this end, and when you push it, you'll see the tip expand out and retract as you push and release the plunger. This one is solid, and it just has a rubber tip, and you want to check that tip to make sure it's not broke off, that it's nice, round, fully intact, and there's no big bend on it like a crease. If you got a really sharp crease on it, then it's probably leaking, and that leads to your engine flooding and dying. So this one looks good. No plunger, it's a solid piece, just a rubber tip. And I'm going to go ahead and put that back on the float and attach it to the needle valve. Do this over the bin, because again, you lose that little clip and it's all for nothing. Can't really show you how I'm doing this because I need both hands to do it. But their needle valve is attached again to the float switch by that little dangly clip. Now I'm going to take the carburetor again, and I'm going to put the float right over the jets and lower that needle valve right into that socket where it was. And then I'm going to find that pin and the set screw and lock it back in place. Again, being very careful to hold all these parts together, not losing a one. Slide this pin into place and find the screwdriver, the screw. Cool thing about, you don't have to keep these screws separate because they're different. The set screw is much shorter and got a wider head on it than the ones that hold the bowl together. So you're going to know the difference when you go to put them back together. Just because there's 4 of one and 1 of the other. It's pretty easy to tell which is which. And you want to snug that down. Okay, now you got the float can pivot up and down. It doesn't move very far, it just goes from there to there. Make sure there's no debris on it, not even specks of dust. Wipe it down really good. And if you got to, spray it some more with your WD-40. But make sure you got all the debris out, and that that switch, that valve is in there, seated right. Okay, now when it's in a down position, it should be at a little angle, and when it's in the up position, it should be pretty much horizontal. Okay, that's what you're looking for. Got that, checks out. Now we're going to put the seal back on and put the bowl back together. No, we're not. No, we're not. I skipped a step. I'm going to take that rubber stopper, put it right back in there. Otherwise, this thing won't run. And again, that also needs to be checked to make sure it's still rubbery and not stiff and hard and cracking and stuff. But without that, you're going to be just gushing gas in and flooding. You won't have that restricted flow that you need. So all the parts are back in. Seems to be working right so far. Now we're going to take the bowl and we're going to lay that seal into the groove in the bowl and just make sure that it's sitting in the right position. And now one hole is bigger than the other, so if you put the gasket in wrong, it's not going to flow right. So you want to make sure you get the big hole with the big hole on the gasket and the little hole with the little hole on the gasket, and then the gasket all sits flat into that groove. If any of it is bouncing out of the groove, it's not going to seal. It needs to be seated all the way around. If that won't seat, it's because it's swelled up and it needs to be replaced. If it's crushed, it also needs to be replaced. So we're going to line those holes up. See the two holes in the gasket? They line up with the two holes right here on the intake. We're going to line those up and mate this together. Now some carburetors, when you put the pin in the float, this bowl is the only thing holding the pin from falling out. So once you put the pin and float and needle valve in, the bowl needs to go right on top to hold it in place, and then you just hold it with your hand until you get the screws in. Otherwise you lose parts and you go cry because it's $350 for a new carburetor. And dang, you can sometimes find a whole motor for less. So I'm going to go ahead and put these screws back in. Don't tighten them down. You just want to get them all in there and started by hand so that you don't cross thread them. It's really easy to cross thread something with a tool, where if you turn it in, get it started a few turns by hand first, then you know it's not cross threaded. Then when you go torquing down with the screwdriver, you're not causing damage. But if you go cross threading a screw and torquing into it, you're cutting the threads. It'll never tighten down again. It'll be stripped. You've ruined the part. So now as I go around here, I'm going to bring each screw gently. I don't want to tighten it. I just want to snug it down until it touches the casing and stop. And I'm going to go around and put each screw down to where it touches. And what the reason for this is because you want the carburetor bowl to lay down onto that gasket flat before compressing it. You don't want it compressing from one corner to the other and then pushing all the material to one side and creating a leak or a pinch point. You don't want this metal, even though it's cast aluminum, feels real solid, on a micro level it warps if you tweak it the wrong way. So you want to bring it down evenly, get all the screws in, make sure they're all laid in flat and snugged down, and then you're going to go around in sequence and just do a little bit more of a snug, just a gentle. You're still not tightening it, you're just kind of snugging it to compress the lock washer, but you're not getting it fully tight until you've gone all the way around and they're all evenly snugged. And that just makes sure that your metal comes down flat as it presses in, and there's no kinking in the gasket. It's very important with just about any part you're putting back on an engine, is that you snug it down in the right sequence. And you're not going to just bring one screw down to fully tight. You're going to go all the way around and gradually bring them down to tight. Want to make sure that that part seats very evenly pressured, and you'll have a good seal. Now, I don't know what the exact foot-pounds of pressure is on these that you're supposed to put, but I just kind of do it by feel, where if you go too tight, you're going to strip the screws and the whole thing will leak forever. There's another $350 for a new carburetor. So you want to be snug, you don't want no leaks, but you don't want to over tighten either. Just going around, and now I think they're pretty well locked in. Okay, now the carburetor is rebuilt, we're going to test it to make sure it's working properly before putting it back into the engine. So the first thing I want to do is get all the gas off of it that I can and dry it off real good, because I'm about to put my mouth on the fuel intake of this thing. Now keep in mind, this is a diaphragm style fuel pump, so if you blow hard into the diaphragm, it will tear the diaphragm and destroy your fuel pump. You want to blow gently, but what you're going to do is you're going to hold the carburetor upright and gently blow into the intake to hear that it's allowing flow through the carburetor and out the intake. Okay? And you hear that? Whoop, whoop. That's the diaphragm vibrating from me blowing air past it. Okay? Very gently. Now I'm going to do the same thing, and as I gently blow, I'm going to turn the carburetor upside down, and that float valve is going to drop into place, pressing the needle into the seat, and if it's working right, it should stop the flow of air. Okay? There. And you don't want to press harder to make sure it's stopping, because you'll tear the fuel diaphragm. You just want to feel that it stopped the flow, and then when you flip it back upright, it once again flows. And that's how you know that your needle valve is seating properly, sealing and opening as needed. The way it works, fuel comes in the intake and it's constantly being pumped by the fuel pump. It goes into this bowl, and that float valve, what it does is it prevents your engine from flooding. Okay, your engine is sucking the air fuel mixture coming off the top of that injector, but it's sucking it from the ball down here, this bowl. And when that bowl gets full, that valve goes up and closes off. The float comes up and presses the valve into the seat and closes it off, so more fuel isn't flooding in and killing the engine. And then when the bowl gets low, the float drops down, allowing the needle to lower, which allows gas to pass through again, and it fills back up. And that's just your regulator, your fuel regulator is what that does. Okay? I'm going to put this whole thing back in the bin with the wire brush, and it's ready to go back together. You put it back together and it'll fire right up. A couple of holes, choke it of course, prime it. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put it back together, and then I have to clean my fuel, because that whole fuel system is infiltrated with water and funk. Okay, so you've gone through the carburetor rebuild. Let me explain the choke knob for those of you that saw me pull the choke knob but don't really understand how it works. You saw how I disconnected it from the motor, but you didn't see how it came out of this handle in the cowling. So this is going to have a hole in it here on one side, and then you'll see there's a notch on the other side, and then a notch in the face. And the way that works is the long piece goes to the engine, the short piece goes into this knob. It goes right through that slot, the notch on one side, and you have to hold it at an angle until it reaches through the hole, and then it can pivot into the notch in the front. See that? And I believe I got it upside down, but no, it only goes one way. But that way this guy goes into your motor where that clip goes, and when this knob slides in and out, this rod can pivot up and down and stay connected to work the choke. these two fall apart if you let them go, so you want to just clip it in when it's ready. This whole thing has to go into the cowling and then snap in and be clipped without dropping it. That can be tricky. You drop it into that cowling, good luck getting it back out. You have to take the whole thing and dump the motor upside down and shake it to get it to fall out, because you can't reach down in there under the motor between the cowling and the motor and get it. So I recommend, and it's not magnetic, it's plastic. So, you know, yeah, this one's magnetic, but still, it's a pain. I just recommend holding on to it. Like, hold on to it with a grip. You gotta hold of both parts at all times. Okay, again, why I keep this little bucket with me and all the parts in it as I work, because these little parts, it's just too expensive to replace that little thing. You know, you gotta buy the whole dang carburetor or the whole motor sometimes. Like, it's just insane. The amount of money they want for a little part too is ridiculous, because you can't find it anywhere else, and you can't just custom make it. You know, you can if you have a machine shop, but if you do, chances are you just built yourself a better motor anyway. Anyway, let's get over here and put this puppy back in the motor. And this is, putting it back together is pretty much the reverse of everything. Okay, do I really want to, well, how do I want to handle this? I need to, drain the fuel out of this tank. I don't want to get that bad fuel. Actually, you know what? I don't want to. That fuel, if it's bad fuel, it actually don't smell bad in the tank yet. I think it was just the carburetor sitting. Man, that's kind of questionable. It smells like it's ready to turn, but not quite yet. It may have some water in it. Probably has water in it. Dang it, man. Okay. Really, the sensible thing to do is to go ahead and drain the fuel out. I need something to catch it. I do not want to take this tank out. It's a real pain getting it back in. Not much fuel in there. Like maybe a pint and a half. I can throw some green tea to the fishes and then put it in this container. So this is kind of scary because I'm standing up in a canoe balancing this motor. Pull this. I'm just going to take the hose off of the fuel valve on the tank side, and as soon as I do, it's going to want to start dripping. So first I take the clamp off, and when I pull the hose, I want to elevate it right away so that it's not dripping too much until I get the jug under it. And then once I get the hose into the jug, I tilt it and just drain all the gas. And then of course, if you open the lid, it's going to drain faster, so you get some airflow. Oop. that gas is pretty bad. It smells like turpentine instead of gas, and that's not a good sign. But at least I know the source of the problem was bad gas sitting too long. I can speed this up a little bit. I take the gas. That's kind of dangerous, but take the gas cap off and blow pressure into the tank, and it pressurizes the hose and drains faster. But if you're not blowing out when you remove your face from the hole, you're going to suck in a bunch of gas fumes and make yourself pass out. Don't want to do that. You probably just let it drain naturally. Like, just do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. Alright, now this gas is no good. No matter what, it's now been sat in a plastic that's not designed for fuel, and that means it's absorbed some of the polymers from the plastic into the gas. And it actually doesn't take long before this kind of plastic will dissolve in gas. So don't expect you're going to be storing this in this container for long. It's not something like a milk jug will melt before you get home with it sometimes. So just keep that in mind, that that's not a gas jug, and it is not a viable gas storage device. And in fact, it's illegal for a gas station to allow you to pump. If you look in the bottom of this jug though, you see water settling, and you can tell there's water in the bottom of the gas already. And I bet if I were to drain all that water out, the gas would still be okay. It would probably still burn, but it's just not worth it to run this gas through my motor. This is a fairly new motor, and it'd probably be okay, but it's not worth it. I just get some new gas in it. I'll let some of this. Oh, dang it. Okay, here we go. I dripped a little in the canoe, but that's not bad. A few drips now. Within the next day or two, that'll evaporate, as long as I don't, I don't want to put that in the water. I don't want to bail the canoe out until all that gas evaporates, because I did drip about a cup full of gas in the canoe. I couldn't get all of it into that jug, but there's only a few drops left in the tank. So just let it drain down, and all the volatiles can evaporate out. Still a little gunk and debris in the bottom too of the gas tank. Like, next time I get into this, I'm gonna take this gas tank off and flush it out and get all the debris out. But as it is, there's a filter on this system in line, so a little bit of debris in there is not gonna get into the motor, as long as the filter's still working and intact. And I believe that's all of it. No water left in the tank. And then it doesn't hurt to go ahead and use some WD-40 to displace any water that might be in the bottom of the tank. WD is called WD, literally stands for Water Displacement Formula 40. That's what the WD means in WD-40. Water displacement, and that's exactly what it was invented for, displacing water, which is exactly what the problem is with this engine. Okay, now put the fuel line back on from the tank, to the valve, to the fuel selector valve. I'm going to slide the clamp back into place to lock it in. And I'll show you guys all this in a second after I just reconnect this. You guys saw me take it apart. If you didn't, I'll upload this video. You can see it later. But you'll see when I'm taking these parts off, I like to leave the tabs on the clamps facing upward where they're easy to grip. My gas cap back in place. And now she's ready to go back on. Oh no, she's not. The carburetor's ready to go back in place. The fuel system's been flushed fairly well enough. Carburetor's been rebuilt. Now let's just lay this motor down. I'll show you what I'm looking at here in a second. Like I said, this is an exact knockoff of a Mercury 5-horse from the 80s and late 80s, early 90s. This is your pull start. It just attaches with a rubber here, and you can just kind of pull some tension. If you can't pull on the rope unless it's in neutral, or you pull up on this lock lever here. This is the neutral safety lever. Make sure you're in neutral before you pull start it. But if you need to bypass that, you just lift this lever up and it'll pull out without too much trouble. It'll give you enough slack to just move the handle out of the way there to where you can get in here. Now this is your gasket where your carburetor is going to sit. If that gasket's not in there and attached, you need to make sure it's there, it's intact, and you're just going to put it between the carburetor and the bolts. And you're not going to put any sealant on it. You're just going to place it in there. And we're going to drop the carburetor in. Make sure that this drain screw is facing you. Make sure the fuel line is facing away from you. And the butterfly valve is facing outward. The intake valve is facing inward. And we're going to set that in there just so. Line it up with the bolt holes. And now, let's see. I want to take the breather cover and the 2 bolts and put them in their place to hold that all. So once again, we know one of these bolts has to go through the cowling. And it's easier to do it in reverse. Put this bolt through the one that doesn't go through the cowling. And stick it in here on this side so that you can work the cover plate into there and the bolt kind of holds it in place for you. And you can see how it goes through the carburetor in the sleeve, and then you can see the bolt, and then it goes into the motor there. Okay. Now I'm going to get a couple turns in that to hold it in place, but I don't want it too tight. I want to still be able to finagle the other bolt in and move things around a little bit. But I want to get at least a few turns so that it's not coming loose and it's not stripping the threads. Now I'm going to come over here and line up the other side. At this point, you want to also check to make sure your gasket is still in place and still lined up with all the bolt holes. Mine in this case is stuck to the engine, which is fine. Then I don't have to worry about it moving around. And I'm going to go ahead and put the other bolt in. Wiggle it around until it lines up. And again, I'm going to start these bolts gently with the socket and driver rather than the ratchet itself, because I want to make sure that it doesn't cross thread before I put any strain on it. Okay, I'm gonna make sure it's wiggle it in there, wiggle it a little as you're turning to make sure that it's not sticky, and then it's going in nice and straight. And then there, when I hit bottom there, I'm only going just finger tight and then back it off a little bit because I want it to pivot enough for this one to snug into the right place. And again, I'm wiggling it into place so that it doesn't go in crosswise. And I'm very careful not to cross thread these fine threads on this soft aluminum. Okay, now I got them both hands snugged. And this is where I can take the ratchet and go ahead and put a final snug on it. And again, I'm going to do it in sequence. I don't want to just tighten down one all the way. I want a little snug, go to the other one, a little snug, back and forth, so I'm seating it into place flat. And I'm not squishing just one side of that gasket. And again, these are soft thread aluminum casing. If you over tighten it, you're going to break the threads. And that's why I like to use a small ratchet. This is the big ratchet, or the medium ratchet, and it doesn't, like, you don't feel it as much as you do a small ratchet. You can feel that you're putting how much pressure on it a little better. These tend to have a little more torque, and so I'm grabbing here close to the pivot instead of out here where I got a bunch of leverage and I can't feel how much strength I'm putting on it. I'm grabbing here and I'm using my fingertips because I should be using a torque wrench and I should be going according to torque specs. But after having done this for 30 years and built 1,000 of these, I don't have a torque wrench, but I do have a pretty good feel. Do not trust yourself doing this by feel. Use a torque wrench. Do not do this like this. And especially if you're using, these are not quite as crucial as like head bolts. But if you're doing head bolts or valve covers or any of that kind of internal parts, and you don't use torque specifications and do it properly, you are going to mess that engine up. Because you just can't feel inch pounds with your fingers. It's just, you're not that sensitive. Nobody is. Okay, so now the carburetor's back in, but I still don't have the fuel connected or the throttle or the choke. Okay, so that's the next goals. I don't like leaving fuel lines disconnected because things tend to drip when they don't need to. So I'm going to go with the fuel line first. And that's here. Let me set the phone down. I'm gonna have to reposition this so you can see it. I'll give you a shot of this. Man, this is so much easier to do in a shop on land. But let me show you the line we took. That hose we took off of the fuel pump intake right there. I'm just going to pop it back on there and then slide that clamp back into place with the needle nose. And just so you can know what I'm doing that you can't watch me do. So when we come back and you look at it, you'll see what I just did and know what I did. Line that sucker up. Squeeze the hose fully. Make sure it goes all the way into place. Don't go half-assed. That nipple, that hose needs to be all the way butted up against the metal casing of the fuel pump before you put the clamp in place, or it won't seal. And the clamp needs to go, there's a little ridge. You'll notice there's a ridge on that nipple. The clamp needs to go past the ridge onto the shaft of metal. If it doesn't go past the ridge, it's not going to seal. And also it needs to stay past the ridge but close to it. You don't want to go too far past it, because it also allows room for leakage. And these are really crummy clamps. I hate them. I really prefer the stainless steel screw down with a screw tip, you know, clamps. that you can tighten fully. These are just kind of springed on there. They're cheap and easy to put in place, and the factory uses them because it saves them time and money. And they work great once or twice, but after they've been compressed and sprung and opened and closed a few times, they just lose some of their springiness and they don't seal very good. Whoa, it's kind of a pain in the butt. So anyway, let me show you how I've reconnected that hose and got the clamp in place to the fuel pump here. It's the fuel pump. And now I'm going to set you guys aside, reposition this motor. I'm going to spin it around to deal with the other side now, and get the pull start up out of the way now that I'm done with the breather cover. And I'm going to lay it on its side here. I think we should be able to see in here after this one without... Well, okay, let's stand it up and I'll show you what I'm about to do. Because I don't think, if I tilt the phone, it messes it up. I don't think I'll be able to show you this. Remember, the cable here, the throttle cable, needs to go in that hole, past that screw, and then the screw has to be tightened in the right place with the right amount of tension on that cable so that that throttle works. That's my next goal.